A Chinese open-source AI model is suddenly outperforming some of the biggest names in the business, and that may be a sign the global AI balance is shifting faster than expected. Welcome to the Automated Daily, Top News Edition. The podcast created by Generative AI. I'm Trent Teller, and today is July 27th, 2026. Coming up, a new twist in the AI race, a warning about fake doctors on TikTok, promising cancer research, a strong Starship test, and why trade policy and conflict are getting more tightly connected. This episode is brought to you by Prezi. Prezi helps you create stunning AI-powered presentations in minutes. Find the link in the episode notes. We begin with artificial intelligence, where one of the biggest developments today came from China. Startup Moonshot AI unveiled Kimi K3, an open-weight generative model that benchmark tests place ahead of major Western systems from Anthropic and OpenAI. What makes this especially notable is not just the scorecard. It is that the model is expected to be publicly available for others to inspect, adapt, and build on. That puts fresh pressure on companies that rely on closed, paid access. It also suggests that Chinese AI firms are still moving quickly, despite U.S. restrictions on advanced chip sales. And that broader push is showing up in hardware too. Memory chipmaker CXMT just had a huge stock market debut in Shanghai, underscoring how much capital and national focus are now flowing into China's AI and semiconductor strategy. Staying with AI, there is also a growing fight over whether the future should be open or tightly controlled. Nvidia, along with Microsoft, SpaceX, Palantir, and others, has launched the Open Secure AI Alliance, arguing that defenders need powerful models they can run on their own systems, especially during cyber attacks. The timing matters. The push follows reports that open models proved more useful in a real security incident than some of the most advanced closed systems. At the same time, OpenAI chief Sam Altman says humanity has entered what he calls the singularity, describing AI's pace as extraordinary, while again warning it could automate a large share of work tasks. Put together, the message is pretty clear. AI is no longer just a product story. It is now a security story, a labor story, and increasingly a geopolitical one. Another AI story today is far less exciting and much more worrying. Experts are warning that AI-generated doctors and health influencers are spreading misleading medical advice across TikTok at enormous scale. A new report found AI-assisted content in a large share of the platform's top health videos, including clips promoting false cancer claims and strange home remedies. The concern here is not just that bad advice exists online. It is that generative AI makes it cheap to produce polished, convincing misinformation that can rack up millions of views very quickly. Medical leaders in the UK say this is already confusing patients and could lead to real harm. For anyone scrolling for health advice, the takeaway is simple. If the source is unclear, the confidence on screen may be completely fake. In medical research, there were two notable developments around cancer. First, researchers at Cambridge and their collaborators found direct evidence that inherited genetics can strongly shape how cancer develops after DNA damage. In plain terms, the same harmful exposure may not affect everyone the same way, because background genetics can influence which mutations take hold and how tumors evolve. That could eventually change how doctors think about screening, prevention, and even why some patients respond differently to treatment. The second finding involves prostate cancer, which is often resistant to immunotherapy. Researchers tested an experimental CRISPR-based RNA approach that helped tumors become more visible to the immune system in mice, making immunotherapy work much better. It is early work, but together these studies point in the same direction. Cancer care is getting more personalized. In space news, SpaceX completed another Starship test flight from Texas, and this one delivered some solid progress. The giant rocket deployed 20 advanced Starlink satellites before the spacecraft made its best re-entry yet, eventually splashing down softly in the Indian Ocean. The first stage booster did not manage a controlled return and was lost in the Gulf of Mexico, so this was not a flawless mission. Still, the key result is that SpaceX gathered valuable heat shield and re-entry data, which is exactly what it needs if Starship is going to become fully reusable. That matters not only for the company's Mars plans, but also for NASA's Artemis moon program. In this phase of testing, a better re-entry is a meaningful step forward. And finally, a look at the wider geopolitical picture, where trade and conflict are both getting sharper. The Trump administration has imposed new double-digit tariffs on more than 60 countries using Section 31, a move critics say could make broad import taxes much harder to unwind. Officials say the policy is tied to enforcement against forced labor goods, but several governments and trade experts are calling the rationale vague and potentially open-ended. The concern is that this may become a more durable way to reshape U.S. trade without fresh approval from Congress. At the same time, Ukraine says it struck a cargo ship in the Caspian Sea that was moving military supplies between Iran and Russia. That attack points to something larger than a single battlefield event. The war in Ukraine is becoming more entangled with tensions involving Iran, regional shipping routes, and the wider balance of pressure between Washington, Moscow, and Tehran. Thanks to our sponsor, CRISPR. CRISPR provides agentic cloud telephony for modern businesses. Find the link in the episode notes. That's the top news for July 27, 2026. The big theme today is that technology, health, trade, and conflict are all crossing into one another faster than before. Thanks for listening to the Automated Daily Top News Edition. We'll be back with the next round of headlines soon.